We will turn the recording on.
All right, good evening, Malden, and welcome to another Malden School Committee meeting. Today is Monday, April 5th, and the time is 6:00 p.m. Our next meeting will take place on Monday, May 3rd at 6:00. So what we're going to do here this evening, I will first read the notice that allows us to meet remotely. We will then pledge allegiance to our flag. We'll have a moment of silence for those who have served our country. Our clerk will then call the roll to ensure that we have a sufficient quorum to meet this evening. We will then introduce Rosetta Languages, who will be doing interpretation for us this evening and for the rest of the year. And then we will get into this evening's agenda. So if there are no questions, in accordance with Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, as well as the governor's August 23rd and December 8th, 2020 revised guidance prohibiting assemblage of more than 25 people, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. In-person attendance by members of the public is prohibited, but all effort will be made to permit public attendance of this meeting via remote access by internet, telephone, and via public broadcast of the meeting by MATV Urban Media Arts on public access television channels. Public access will also be provided by posting draft minutes and or a transcript, recording, or record of the meeting on the City of Malden website at cityofmalden.org as soon as practicable after the meeting. So why don't we first pledge allegiance to our flag? I'd ask everyone to please rise and join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of all those who have fought for our country and continue to do so around the world today. Thank you. We'll now have our clerk call the roll.
Mayor Christensen?
Here.
Mr. Drummy?
Here.
Mr. Froyo?
Yeah.
Mr. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Iovino?
Here.
Ms. Luong? Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Spadafora?
Here.
Mr. Weldai?
Here.
Superintendent O'Terry?
Here.
Student Representative Davidson?
Here.
All right, once again, welcome. And now we're going to go to Danielle of Rosetta Languages and his amazing team. And I just want to credit the school committee for working with us to provide this service now again for the
Thank you, Mayor Gary, and thank you to all the school committee.
All the members.
Oops, sorry.
Take it away.
So I'm just going to briefly do our introduction in each language to basically explain how to get on the language channels. And once again, I want to encourage everyone who's attending to spread the word that we have this service for the meetings. We'd love people to know about it and to take advantage as much as possible. I'll start with Arabic. السلام عليكم مساء الخير عندنا ترجمة باللغة العربية بعد قليل سيظهر على شاشتكم رمز الكرة الأرضية اضغط على هذا الرمز واختر اللغة العربية إذا كنت على هاتف محمول عليك الضغط على 3 نقط ثم اختيار اللغة العربية ثم تم شكرا جزيلا. I will pass it to Spanish.
Buenas noches a todos, bienvenidos. Esta noche tenemos interpretación en español. Cuando se enciende la función, simplemente dirígese al fondo de su pantalla y de ahí presiona el globo y verás Interpretation. De allá escoge Spanish. Si se está conectando tras su teléfono, puede empujar los 3 punticos y de ahí lo mismo escoger Interpretation y Spanish. Muchas gracias. Now I give it over to Portuguese.
Oi, boa noite a todas. Hoje temos interpretação em português. Depois que ativamos a função de interpretação, você vai ver um globo na parte de baixo da sua tela. Você pode clicar nesse globo, aí escolher português. Se você estiver participando de um celular, você vai ver 3 bolinhas na parte de baixo da sua tela, com a palavra more ou mais, e, por favor, escolhe português. Obrigada. I will now pass it to Haitian Creole.
Bonsoir, nom si Nikita, c'est moi qui traduit à Soya pour créole, nous parmi cette langue qui traduit. Les fini Daniel so d'ici ma parole là, ba nouvelle là de façon pour l'autre monde qui rejoindre nous dans réunion yo. Donc les fonctions lui-même, nous parlons en globe, si nous l'en computer, nous parlons sorte de en globe. Nous parlons peser interprétation de peser Haitian Creole. Si nous lancons la phone, nous avons 3 petits points. Dans 3 petits points, nous avons cliqué 3 points, nous avons marqué Haitian Creole, après ça, nous avons marqué Done. OK? Donc, rejoignez-nous à Soya, 10 minutes. Merci. Now I'm going to pass it to Vietnamese, please.
Thank you. Xin chào quý vị, tên tôi là Linh, tôi sẽ là người thông dịch tiếng Việt cho quý vị hôm nay. Một khi chúng tôi đã kích hoạt tính năng phiên dịch, thì xin vui lòng bấm vào biểu tượng quả đĩa cầu ở trên màn hình và chọn ngôn ngữ là tiếng Việt Vietnamese để được nghe phiên dịch trực tiếp. Nếu quý vị đang dùng điện thoại thông minh thì smartphone thì quý vị xin bấm vào 3 dấu chấm và sau đó thì chọn ngôn ngữ phiên dịch tức là Language Interpretation. Rồi sau đó thì quý vị chọn tiếng Việt tức là Vietnamese. Vậy là xong. Xin cảm ơn quý vị. Now I will pass it on to Mandarin.
Thank you. 大家好，我的名字叫 Terry。那我今天呢会跟大家翻译这个普通话。待会儿呢，你们在这个屏幕下方就会看到有一个地球的图标，你们点一下这个地球的图标，你就可以选择Mandarin， 就是国语哈。然后呢，我的同事安娜会跟大家翻译广东话。如果你是用手机或者是用 iPad 上的话呢，你可以在这个屏幕下方点3个点，然后呢在这上面点那个翻译，好，然后再选择 Mandarin， 就可以选择到了普通话的翻译了。好，那就祝大家有一个愉快的夜晚。I'll pass it to Cantonese, please.
Thank you, Terry。大家好，我係 Anna。我今天晚上係 Rosella 團隊嘅翻譯員之一。我哋今天晚上為你提供7種唔同嘅語言翻譯。如果你成日聽到廣東話同步翻譯嘅時候咧，咁你就要去揀熒光屏下面有個地球儀，咁你撳個地球儀就揀 Cantonese， 咁你就要聽到廣東話同步翻譯噶啦。如果你用手機嘅話咧，咁你就撳嗰3個點點點，咁啊聽到更多，撳去廣東話 Cantonese 就會聽到同步翻譯噶啦。多謝晒，一陣間見。Back to you, Danielle. Thank you.
Thank you. And now just remind all the interpreters to activate your microphones, make sure you're not on mute. And host, you may go ahead and put on the interpretation channels.
All right, interpretation is live.
Shukran, masalama. All right, everybody. So let's go to our agenda. And the first order of business is the approval of minutes. And we first have the regular session minutes of March 1st, 2021. Actually, if there's no objection, we could take up the minutes in total. Any objection to doing that?
No. No.
All right, so let me read them. So it's the regular session minutes of March 1st, 2021, executive session minutes of March 1st, 2021, special session minutes of March 8th, 2021, special session minutes of March 10th, 2021, special session minutes of March 11, 2021, special session minutes of March 15, 2021, and finally, the executive session minutes of March 15, 2021. So you've all had them, you've looked them over, and we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. McCarthy to approve, seconded by Mr. Iovino. Any questions, queries, qualms, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? The ayes have it, that carries unanimously. We're now down to item number 2, which is public comment. This is an opportunity for the school committee to address the school committee. We only ask that you state your name and address for the record and that you keep your remarks to just a couple of minutes. So as always, we'll now go over to Adam Weldai, school committee member Ward 5, and who has been helping us administer this part of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if anybody would like to participate in public comment, we have no phones listed. Just please either hit raise hand, use the raise hand function, or type your name and address in the chat or Q&A function if you'd like to participate. As of right now, I am seeing none.
Okay, going once. Twice.
Oh, I've got a hand.
All right.
And it is Amy. So I'll promote to panelist. Please just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening.
Good evening, Amy Friedman, 8 Marvin Street. I sent in a email public comment. I don't know if you have that.
I do. Did you want to read it?
I need to pull it up really quick.
Okay.
You can read it, Mayor
Yeah,
Christian.
we were going to, but if you're here, it might make more sense for you to do it.
I'm not sure if I can get to it quickly here. Let me see.
Or if you want to summarize.
Let's see if I can find it here.
Okay.
Well, I'll summarize.
Okay.
So as not to waste everyone's time looking for it. My husband and I wanted to comment on the NRT transportation contract.
Okay.
Our child, Henry Friedman, receives, services through an IEP, and so he receives transportation services from our home to the BV school where he's in the PACE program. And we had some significant issues with NRT related to Henry's transportation. It resulted in an incident where we asked for video from the bus because of some discrepancies about what we viewed from our home and what the bus driver was saying. And it doesn't appear that those video surveillances are being retained for the amount of time that they're supposed to per NRT's contract. And given that, all of the kids that we're transporting are special needs and many of them are nonverbal, we feel it's pretty important that that provision of the contract that NRT, lives up to that provision, that they in fact retain video surveillance for the period of time that they're supposed to. And I think, per the contract that you've got with them right now, they're supposed to have equipment that would allow them to retain that for at least 30 days. Arguably it should be retained longer under some public records laws, but I think, it's only being kept maybe a week or two. And if a problem arises for one of these kids, I think that video surveillance is crucial. So if this is a contract we're going to renew, I think, we definitely need to hold them to the contract, require them to comply with the terms. And this is one that, this is one particular area of the contract that's, I think, particularly important for these kids that ride the bus. We also are concerned that they're not operating the buses as they should. They're not complying with the laws related to using stop signs, related to maintaining a safe speed. So we have real concerns with the contract with NRT, and would ask you to consider those when deciding whether or not to extend that or renew that contract. Thank you.
All right, very good. We will look into it. All right, Mr. Weldai, back to you.
It looks like there are no other requests for public comment.
All right, we're going to close that part of the meeting. Let's now go to item 3, the superintendent's report. Good evening, Superintendent.
Evening. Thank you very much. Our first item tonight is our Grow Your Own pilot program at Malden High School. And at this time, I would like to call upon Greg Hurley, our Director of Humanities, and Dana Marie Brown, a team chair in the Special Ed Department, to present some information on this.
All right, great. Hello.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here tonight. We're just going to provide you with a quick update on this Grow Your Own program, which is an aspect of our teacher diversification grant, which the superintendent has talked to you about several times. We just wanted to get you up to speed on where that's at and what we're going to be hoping to do this year into next year with a group of our students and with a group of some of our newer teachers. So with that, Mr. Weldai, is it okay if I share my screen for the slideshow and Ms. Brown will
Absolutely
walk us through that?
Thank you, Mr. Hurley, and I will get started while Mr. Hurley is presenting. Like Greg said, I'm Dana Marie Brown. I am the team chair for special education at Malden High School, but in this role, I am the lead instructor for Malden Public Schools Grow Your Own program, which, like Greg said, is part of the teacher diversification grant. We are in year 3 of this grant and of sort of building this program. So what I'm going to do is just give you a super quick overview of what the last 2.5 or so years have looked like and where we hope to go from here. So in year 1, and I was not a part of the initial team, I think it's important. I'm the voice right now because I'm the lead instructor this year, but there have been about, I'd say 18 to 20 Malden Public Schools staff members over the past 3 years who have had a part in putting this grant together and implementing it. Here tonight, we have Greg and also Dr. Chase, who have been here since the beginning. Thank you, Anna. But there are quite a few other teachers who are involved as well. And for the sake of interpretation too, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. I'm going to talk over the first 3 slides. The last 2 slides are very long. I'm not going to talk at all. I'm just going to give a pause and allow the interpreters to interpret the last 2 slides, which, like I said, are fuller paragraphs. So I'll summarize the first 3 and then the last 2, I'll have folks just interpret and I won't voice over those ones. So from last summer to really the beginning of this year, this was the crux of what we worked on, which was meeting to create 6 curriculum units all around kind of the idea of learning how to be a teacher. So units about what students' educational experiences are, what the responsibilities of an educator are, good pedagogy, view of education, etc. And this year, which is year 3, we are implementing a 10-week Grow Your Own pilot program. So on Wednesday afternoons, we have 6 Malden Public Schools staff members who rotate and co-teach classes with 12 Malden High School juniors and seniors all around the topic of learning how to be a teacher or what it's like to be a teacher. In addition, we've partnered with another group in the school who's working with Mass Hire in order for our seniors to be paid to tutor kids in our K-8 classrooms as part of this program as well. And I think I didn't say this, and I'll go back to the first slide because we kind of moved quickly over the first slide, but the long-term sort of goal, and I know folks have been here for the last couple of years and heard people talk through this grant and through this program, but the long-term goal is to not just recruit, but really support and retain teachers of color in Malden Public Schools. And this is a very, very, very small piece of it. But it's the piece that we're, hoping to really grow with our own students, our juniors and seniors at the high school right now. And I think that's the important piece. I say that to also say that we're working on an MTEL prep course with some of our own staff as well, Malden Public School staff members, with some support from the Grow Your Own instructors. And we were able to pay for that MTEL prep course through this grant so that staff members who want to take advantage of that don't have to pay out of pocket, which I think was a really important piece for us. And the goal really long-term of this 10 weeks for this school year is to pilot pilot some of the lessons, some of the units that we've been, creating over the last couple of years. There are over 75 lessons. When you count through all 6 units, it would be impossible to roll out the whole thing this year. But in the long term, I think I speak for the group when I say I would love for this to be a year-long project, a year-long course, a course that is towards students' credits and transcripts and so on and so forth, something that they can be working on every day of the week or close to every day of the week versus just an hour or an hour and a half once a week. And so for the last piece, and hopefully you can see it, I didn't make it too big. I'm not going to talk over this, but 2 of the students provided some feedback. I've taken their names out, but I think it's important for folks to be able to read or hear this through interpretation.
Bless you.
Thank you. Excuse me.
So I apologize for the first paragraph. I know I may have accidentally skipped through that one a little too quickly. So Ms. Brown and I will make sure, Mr. Mayor, that you get the student paragraphs as well. Just to kind of fill in a little bit of context here for what this program really entails. And it's absolutely wonderful that we have all these interpreters here tonight demonstrating what our city truly looks and sounds like. Our goal here is that we're looking to make Malden students want to come back and become teachers at the Malden Public Schools. So the idea behind this is that our students understand Malden, they understand the uniqueness that is the city, and would get the chance as high school students to be able to understand the ins and outs of the teaching profession that they might not be able to normally see just as a student. So we're going to be kind of, I guess, pulling back the curtain on from the student experience a little bit and letting them experience a little bit of what it means to be a teacher. So we've been very fortunate, like Ms. Brown said, to have such a dedicated group of educators who've been working with us from the get-go, who really embrace this concept of having our students stick around here to come back and work in the Malden Public Schools. And, looking at this call now, I know that Ms. Brown herself is a product of that exact same system, being a Malden High grad herself, coming back here to teach in our schools. I know Mr. Weldai is a Malden High grad who's gone on to become an educator. And I'm sure there are plenty of people listening who have grown up in Malden and come back, and we want to continue that tradition and use it as a way to leverage the strength of our community into really diversifying and changing what the face of our staff makeup looks like. So that way we reflect what our community looks like now as it grows and evolves.
So at this point, why don't we take some questions from the members? Any questions on the presentation? Let's go to Ms. Spadafora to kick us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And honestly, I really don't have a question, just because this was presented to our Policy and Procedure Subcommittee. And I don't want to take that away from Mr. Weldai, who'll be discussing this later in the evening, but I just wanted to say I am thoroughly impressed with this program. It's something that we've talked about for a really long time in regards to encouraging those that want to become teachers to enter the field, but not only enter into the field of education, but to come back to Malden because it's so desperately needed that we have teachers that represent our community. And if they're coming out of our community, that's a whole step forward. So I was really excited to see this when it was presented in the program of studies. And I think, you know, I'm looking forward to see how many students actually enroll and how much we can build upon it, you know, in the future. So thank you, Mr. Hurley and Ms. Brown, for all of your work in putting this together. I think it's beyond fantastic for our high school students.
Great, very good. Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to echo, I think, what Ms. Spadafora said. It was great when we heard about this in policy committee. I think I can echo what Greg's colleague, our director of Title I, Janice Raymond, said in the chat. This is a fantastic program for our high school students and for Malden's future educators. I would have loved something like this when I was in high school, but I think it's just another example of, you know, we've said it before, but I think the work that Mr. Hurley does is probably one of the unsung heroes of our district. And, you know, Dana Marie said that even though she wasn't a part of it year one, I think the fact that she is a part of it now is also a good sign for us as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all of the great things that this program will do moving forward. And it's nice to finally see something that, you know, we've been talking about and we've been thinking about, and now it's just here and it's in action. I think that's a true service, I think, for our kids and for our district. So thank you.
All right. Well, you both have made such an impression that I believe our student representative wants to sign right here and now. So let's go to Ms. Davidson.
Will this be available for next school year?
It most certainly will, Juliana. It's going to be.
Thank you.
When you meet with the guidance counselor, and Craven's going to yell at me, but probably within the next couple of months, when you meet with the guidance counselor to build your schedule, it's right in there. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. As long as the committee approves it, the program of studies.
Okay. Committee, can we please approve it? Senior year next year. This is my last chance.
All right. Motion to suspend docket rules? No, not yet. All right.
I could just add this, Mr. Mayor, that it is in the program studies that was presented to the subcommittee that Mr. Weldai and Ms. Spadafora spoke about. We'll be talking about it later on tonight.
All right. Let me stay with you, Mr. Mastrangelo. Is that so? Is that what Ms. Brown was referring to? This would be a year-long course with credit? Is that what's in there, or is it more? Okay. Because we're wrapping up year 3 at the end of June. Is that it, Mr. Hurley and Ms. Brown?
That's correct. Yep.
And is there another opportunity to get that grant, or is that it?
I think it was originally designed as a 3-year grant. So I think this may be the final year of it.
Okay. And then it's up to each district to determine what they do next, right?
Right.
So
The
our
idea-
response is by having a course.
Exactly. Yep. And
On
so
its
that's
own.
what we're going to
Okay.
be doing. We're going to be taking a course. We've spent the 3 years building this program, and then it's up to us to now put it in and implement it, which
Makes
Mr.
sense.
is on board with and helping us out with.
All right, very good. All right, there you have it, everyone. So thank you once again for the presentation, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Back to our superintendent.
Sure, and I just want to add to that, if I could, there's a few more things. Also, Malden High graduate class of 82. Just a few months ago, DESE partnered with the Mass Hires Workforce Development Board to offer a unique opportunity for Mass Hire partner schools related to students pursuing teaching careers. Current 12th graders this year interested in pursuing education as a career have the opportunity this spring to complete a paid internship in the elementary schools in their city. They named this program the High School Senior Education Internship Program. Over the past few weeks, our guidance department, led by Erin Craven, has worked alongside the Grow Your Own team with Dana Marie and Greg to dovetail both of these initiatives, thus providing our student education interns a holistic experience of learning and applying their knowledge, all while getting paid. To our knowledge, we are the only program in the state utilizing both of these funded opportunities alongside one another. So I believe we have 8 seniors this year who will be making $13.50 an hour, working up to 100 hours in our elementary schools. So we're really excited about that. Next item I have up here is an employee leave of absence request. Mr. Robert Grinnell, who is a first-year Spanish teacher at Malden High School, has requested a 1-year leave of absence in order to pursue a Fulbright English teaching assistant grant in Colombia from August of this year until June of next year. This was brought forward to the school committee to be discussed tonight or be referred to the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we would refer that,
That's the normal protocol, correct?
Mr. Weldai?
I'll make a motion.
What's your pleasure? Do you feel differently, Mr. Weldai, or?
No, I mean, I was looking to gain a little more context, I think, from the superintendent. So, I mean, at least I've heard.
Hence do you want to get a little bit more now and then we can refer it, or let's see what he has to say. So Superintendent, could you provide a little bit more on that and then maybe give us your initial advice?
I think it should be referred to this subcommittee because there's some issues that need to be discussed. I think he also, Mr. Grinnell also provided a letter that should be in your packet, I believe.
All right. Ms. Spadafora, I saw your hand raised.
I did not raise my hand, but I will say I do think this should go to policy and procedure. I think we've worked really hard to maintain those policies and make sure that we follow all protocols. We've had similar requests come before us in the past. So just to make sure that there's a lot that goes into looking into these, whether it's approving and making sure we have the staff there to replace those that are looking to take a leave of absence. So I wouldn't feel comfortable voting this on the floor right now.
All right, let's do it. Motion by Mr. Weldai, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. So this is to refer, okay, everyone? And Mr. Weldai, your expectation would be you come into the May meeting with a recommendation?
Absolutely.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That is referred to policy unanimously. Special education update.
Sure. At this time, I'd like to bring along our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, Pam McDonald, for a special education update.
Hi, everyone. So we have gone back and we've done some more calls on the audit. So I'm going to share my screen. See if I can get this up. I'm hoping everyone can see this. So we did some follow-up, and what we did is we set up a call center to follow up with the rest of the families. We set up the center at the special ed office. Calls were made from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. because we wanted to make sure that we were catching families at home and when they weren't working. We've also tried families during the day as well, but we really wanted to target that time frame so that we could make sure we tapped into our working families, parents that aren't necessarily home during the day. We made calls Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights, and families that needed translations, we were able to use a company that if we dialed them, they went on the line with us so that we could translate for families. Just so you know, the original response rate was 54%. Currently, we have 94% of families completing the survey. A total of 771 families answered the survey, which is actually, I've just re-updated this PowerPoint because we did have some more families that we were able to get in touch with as of today. So we've been working at this nonstop. 47 families that we contacted did not want to complete the survey and have asked not to be called back. Of our population, 166 of the students that we currently have were not in Malden Public Schools last spring. So that goes into takes your response rate down as well. 57 students have graduated, 18 students dropped out, 17 families we have non-working numbers for, so we're continuing to try to find their numbers. And all in all, there were about 24 families that we have not been able to contact. All families have received at least 6 calls at various times of the day, during the day, at night, and from various staff members. We've had team chairs and other people try, so that we have a variety of people calling, because some people answer for a teacher, some will answer for a team chair. So we've tried to mix it up to try to get a hold of families. So the responses are similar. If you down the bottom, I've noted what the previous response was on most of the slides. So just about 76% of our emails were correct. And then it's interesting to note that we have about 11% of our population that says that they do not have an email, and 13%, just over 13%, were incorrect, and those have been updated in the database. The remote learning plan, that stat stayed pretty similar. And then did someone call to discuss the remote plan? That went down just a little bit. Did your child receive the services outlined in their plan? That did go up. Originally 60% said yes, and now we're just over 63% saying no. 63% saying yes, they did receive the services. And then it's interesting to note that it did change a little bit. Originally, speech and language was the big service that people said they were missing, but as we've contacted more families, it's pretty evenly split between academic support services and speech and language. So that was an interesting change as we kept looking at the numbers. This was how you would have rated the remote learning from last spring. 32% were satisfied. 17% or almost 18% said partially satisfied. It's interesting to note that the overall not satisfied at all went down from 14% to 12%. So that was good to see. Our rate of who got COVID learning plans in the fall went up to almost 70%. I did say this before, we have followed up with the families that said that they did not get learning plans, but part of it is that the term we used when we presented those to families was different than the term we used on the survey. So there was a little confusion on that. I didn't want to change the wording on the survey so that we would have the same consistent results. Overall, people felt, and it continued to stay the same, about 66% said that they felt like we were doing a better job with the remote learning than we had last spring. And I just want a special thanks to the following people: Allison Pegluca, Liz Smith, Heather Whittington, Lisa Keene, Katerina Christendulo, Sarah Meyer, and Kim Bryson, all who have worked tirelessly. Especially I want to say Liz Smith, who has called the high school families, which was the biggest missing portion that we had for the survey, and she's worked tirelessly every day. And I'm sure if I go on, I'll probably have the number may have jumped a few more because she has called nonstop. So I really, am so thankful for everyone who helped and manned those call centers. We were consistently calling 2 and 3 nights a week to try to get that percentage up.
All right, very good. Thank you. As always, let's go to our lead, Ms. Luong. What do you think?
I'm happy that, we've been able to contact the amount of families that we have. So thank you so much. I do have a couple of questions. The 17 families were not able to, we didn't have phone numbers for them and contact. How exactly do we get in touch with them to do their IEPs if we have no contact information for them to do, a simple, to do their, so that's a little bit of a concern for me, is that we don't have any information. So if they're on an IEP, how would we do that?
So a lot of those families, it's tricky to get a hold of them, and some through email. We're trying to track down the right number. A lot of those families, a number of those families are homeless, so their numbers change a little bit. So we're working on that, and I have contacted the teachers, and the teachers are trying to get in touch with them. I think in a district this size, you're always going to have people that are kind of, on the edge, and with the ability to have utilities. So that's something, that I think a bigger issue for the district that we really want to talk about how we provide wraparound services and supports to those people and outreach. I think that's an important next step as we look at this. Those families that we do have a hard time engaging, how do we do that better? And I think that's a great point, Ms. Luong. And I really think as we move forward, that's one of the biggest takeaways is how we make sure we're engaging all of our students.
Wonderful. And then I noticed on one of the slides it had, you know, what services were the most that people said they didn't receive. And at the bottom there was NA. What kind of not applicable? So what exactly was in that category? I was just curious.
Yeah. So what happened is people would say, we'd ask, do you think you got all your services? And they would say no. So then you'd go to the next question. What do you think you missed? Did you miss your academic? And they'd say, no, I didn't miss anything. So then we had to go to not applicable. So that's why
okay.
Because people were a little, sometimes people are confused. So we had to have, so there were a few people who would say, oh, no. I actually think I got everything, but. So they, some people would say things like, no, I think I got everything, but I think I want more speech services. Or I think my child could use this and they don't get any, OT, and I really think they want OT. So we'd put NA there, and then we followed up with a lot of families afterwards.
Okay, so one of your last slides, it had, people had families that were were they satisfied with remote learning? Some, and the ones that said it's worse, and the ones that said, which was a good amount, and then the ones that said it was the same. I'm more concerned with the people that said the remote learning for them was worse. So how are you and your staff, you and your staff have a plan to address that, correct?
Yeah, so I think this is a trying time. And, I think one of the things that I think we've seen is a little bit of fatigue. So what they were able to sort of put up with in the spring, when we followed up with some of those families, it was, I know Liz Smith talked to a lot of families, and the sentiment was, it's not really it's not so much the quality, we just can't do it anymore. We need our kids back in school. It's hard, it's hard for a high schooler to be remote, some high schoolers to be on a screen all day. And I can't, police my 14 or 15-year-old. So I think, part of it is just the fatigue of pandemic life with some of them. And some of them, it's a change in teacher. It's hard to make connections completely remotely. But, we have been doing a lot of work to follow up with families. And so I have to thank my staff, the special ed department in Malden has worked really hard this year. And I always say it, but I got to give a shout out to our sub-separate teachers who have been in since October 13th. They really have gone above and beyond. I know that wasn't your question, but anytime I can,
it's fine.
They've worked so hard, those sub-separate teachers, since October 13th. And our team chairs, I don't know if Dana Marie's still here, but she's been in since October 13th. So, I want to thank all of our team chairs for all their hard work.
No, absolutely connect with that. And my last question, I'm sorry. So will you bring us a plan on how we can keep this audit updated on a yearly basis? I mean, we've all gained some really good knowledge from this. There's some takeaways that we can take from this from a district standpoint. So, maybe you could I'm not going to put you on the spot tonight to say, what's the plan? But if we could put something together that kind of keeps this information updated at this high level, be appreciated. That's it for me.
So one of the things I will say about that, I've thought about it, and I think if we can have a simple questionnaire that we sort of give to parents at the beginning or the end of a team meeting, maybe the beginning, so that it won't be in one chunk, but as the school year goes on, you'll hit everyone. So then maybe in June you could be updated. If we started it in September, you'd theoretically get almost all of your families, because everyone has an annual review or reeval. I think that might be a good way to do it, so that, because some families will also answer questions for their team chair, who they're very familiar with, that they've been with for years, that they have a great relationship with, because most of our kids, they're in a K-8. So, some of them have been with a team chair for 7-8 years, since kindergarten. So there's that level where I also think you'll get a much more honest and intimate conversation about what they're getting and not getting. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, but I'm happy to take suggestions.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Luong. Anybody else? Just on behalf of the committee, Ms. McDonald. So when going forward, do you think we would receive the results of this annual audit? Do you have a timeline in mind going forward? Would it be in the fall, the spring? I presume it
Personally,
would be.
yeah, I mean, personally, I think if you did it throughout the year and did it in the spring, it would make more sense. I know we're kind of off track for that, but I think that would be I think logistically it would be better.
Okay.
But, you know, because I think in the fall, it's kind of hard, you know, with new teachers, new relationships to build. But I'm open to doing whatever it is, you know, the committee would like me to do.
But right now, you're thinking next spring, we would get an update as to what occurred the previous school year?
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to go. And don't
All right,
forget,
very good.
this spring we'll also have a lot of information because we'll be finishing up with the tiered focus monitoring. They're coming on site the end of this month, I believe, and then we'll get that. So that will be a lot of information that we can use to plan and really set some nice goals for the special ed department moving forward.
When do you expect to receive that?
I believe mid-May, she said.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, thank you again. Now let's go back to our superintendent to talk about the transportation contract. Did I miss someone? I'm sorry. Ms. Spadafora, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, Ms. Spadafora had a question.
Yeah, go right ahead, Ms. Spadafora. I apologize.
Sorry, I apologize. Maybe I wasn't as visual as I needed to be. I just wanted to also, so as somebody that took the audit myself, Tanya McDonald is a fantastic out of district coordinator. And I just wanted to make mention in the thank yous at the end of your presentation, because
I forgot her.
She has been outstanding for our out of district students. And also, I think the audit, I'm really happy to see it being done. I'd like to see it tailored or have a separate survey tailored to out of district, because when I was answering the questions, it was very, very difficult to answer what was happening. So I was being asked, you know, how was your, you know, how did Malden do in district when clearly I'm an out of district parent? So, you know, I couldn't give an answer, although an answer was required from me. So they said, we want an answer from you. So I feel like that really skewed the results. If we have 80 plus out of district parents that are being required to answer a question that doesn't pertain to them, I kind of see an issue with those results. So I just suggest, you know, going forward, if we're going to be doing these surveys, that we have separate, you know, questions that are tailored to our out of district caregivers, because I felt like there was only maybe 2 or 3 questions that really were focused on, did you get an amended IEP for, you know, the pandemic? But I couldn't actually answer the question on how the city was doing, you know, in district. It's not something that pertains to me. So that would be my suggestion in going forward, to make sure that we're really targeting a separate survey for out of district.
Yeah, I know, and I agree. And I think we could if we just tweak the questions a little bit, I think that it would be more relevant. And I have to apologize. I actually missed Tanya when I did that yesterday. She did make a ton of calls for us. So thank you, Tanya. Oh my God, I feel terrible. She's really great. I'm sorry. Thank you for that suggestion, though.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? All right, seeing none. Back to our superintendent, transportation contract.
Sure, thank you. I know at our last meeting, I think we presented the beginning of this, and our attorney, Howard Greenspan, is going to speak on this matter right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Superintendent and Mayor and the committee. This is a one-year agreement just for this year, very similar to what we did with NRT at the time COVID began, from March of last year just to the end of the school year. This is a one-year agreement where we're paying certain percentages to NRT during the time when we didn't have a program, when we weren't using the services. It's a percentage to keep the companies going, and to provide transportation, to be able to provide transportation when we need it. So it's very similar to last year. It is just for the 2021 school year.
All right. So I presume, Superintendent, you recommend.
Yes.
Questions of the members? Mr. Weldai, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So last year, correct me if I'm wrong, so we voted to give NRT 78% of their contract for the full duration of the contract. But this year, they're providing the service at least 4 days a week.
Yeah, but we had a period of time, I believe, at the beginning of the year when there wasn't any services for a short time at the beginning of the year.
So are we only talking about, I guess what I'm asking is, what are we actually talking about approving? Because we're not, I think the way the agenda item was listed, I think was a little misleading to the public, we could tell, right? Because I think they think we're approving a contract. That's not happening. We've already approved the 1 year extension.
It's just an amendment to that 1 year extension, correct?
So are we just talking like September through October 13th?
No, we're talking about this school year.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, so we've paid them though, right, for the services that they have provided.
Yes, but we haven't paid for any of the charges when we were out of service, like we did last year.
And so what they're looking for is the 78% of that for all of those days so that would count every Wednesday throughout the whole year.
Tony, I just have Tony weigh in on that. I'm not quite sure of that piece of it.
All right, Ms. Mertz.
Yes, that would cover the Wednesdays, because now they're back full time. So they'd be paid for the Wednesdays from here on in. But from September to October, they were not paid. Then in October, they were only paid for 4 days a week because they didn't provide the service on that 5th day. But I believe there was special legislation passed that you can enter into this agreement to pay that one additional day at the rate that we negotiated last year during the pandemic, because it's still considered pandemic pay.
Yes, and last year special legislation was passed because there was an issue about you had a warrant that services were actually rendered. So that prevented us from paying the companies without the special legislation, which was extended for this year.
All right, Mr. Weldai, or any further questions? We might want to, are you looking for a response this evening, or could we send this over to Ms. Spadafora and her committee? Mr. Greenspan or Superintendent?
They haven't been paid, but if you want to take a deeper dive into it, I don't think that would be a big problem with that. I mean, if there are more questions or you want to take a better look at it.
Let's see what the rest of the body says. Let's see, other hands, any questions? Ms. Spadafora and then Mr. McCarthy.
So I just want to be clear, this is retro to September 2020 through essentially
The end of the school year.
End of the school year, but we'll say April 28th, because at that point we're full time. So our busing is actually our special education students. So it's prior to that.
Correct.
I guess I'm just questioning because we do have NRT provides transportation to our out of district students, and some of those have been full time since September. So I personally would like to just look at it a little bit deeper before any decision is formally presented to NRT. And Mr. Weldai touched upon, I thought I was coming into this for the overall contract, to be quite honest. I didn't, understand that this was just an amendment. So a quick question of our attorney, when will we be looking at that contract? Because I know that is up on June, at the end of June.
I'll have to take a look at that.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, and could you also check? I thought we had already acted on that, Mr. Greenspan.
I'll take
but
a
I
look.
could be wrong. Okay, let's go over to Mr. McCarthy.
Really quick, my question was answered.
Okay, anybody else?
No problem.
All right, let's motion to refer to the Budget Subcommittee. Motion by
Second.
Ms. Spadafora, seconded by Mr. Iovino. So everybody clear on what we're doing? We're going to refer this over to the Budget Subcommittee, and then the expectation, Ms. Spadafora, you'll be able to come back out to the May meeting for resolution? Okay. No other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. All right, now back to our superintendent for district updates and highlights.
Thank you very much. Today we began our first full day of 5-day a week with our kindergarten through 5th grade students. It was really wonderful to see many of our kids and our families there at the lineup this morning. Lots of smiling faces. It went very well. We had, despite high number of absences with teachers, we had tremendous amount of energy in our buildings today with our kids. I know the mayor was over at the Salemwood this morning and saw them in action with a high number of our kids and families. Very thankful that we're back full-time in person. So we are at the next stage of our learning. I also just want to remind folks that we are still in hybrid for grades 6 through 12. Today, our grades 10 and 11 students began at Malden High School in hybrid. And then next Monday, our grades 6 and 7 students will begin in hybrid. And then on April 28th, we will have our 6 through 8 students in full-time 5 days a week. I'd also, at this time, in the interest of time, I don't want to hold him up. One of the items I have on here is just an update on our technology. I know some of you have been concerned. We had some internet issues last week, so our city's director of information technology, Anthony Rodriguez, has been working tirelessly around the clock with Kandu, who is our network manager, as well as our technicians. And Anthony can provide an update on what has gone on. We've seemed to have settled the problem. Everything's up and working, but I think Anthony can give you some technical context on this.
All right, take it away.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. So we had a little bit of a hiccup with some of the devices that, for lack of a better term, help all the devices go out to the internet. It took us a little time to track it down due to the complexity of the network. We have 5 schools that are coming in, but they don't have separate lines. They all come in one fiber interface. So it took us a little while to identify what the issue was. And it was a combination of our content filter as well as some of our domain controllers that we have spread out throughout the district. We made some quick adjustments and we seem to have nullified that issue that was happening. Some of it was because of a lot of looping traffic from people that were trying to do classroom Google Meets inside of the classrooms. So some of the traffic was swirling and compounding things. We've made some adjustments and we're going to make further adjustments during this next technology upgrade cycle. A lot of the E-rate funding that we've received in the past helped us out with our network infrastructure, but really didn't address some of the problems that we have with some of the older operating systems that still operate the domain controllers and the domain for the entire district. We're going to be upgrading those, making sure that everything is on Server 2016 platform, and making sure that everything works unified now. Our first day with the kids coming back seems to have worked out fairly well. We have a workaround for some of the affected schools, and took a little while for us to figure it out, but I think we're in pretty good shape right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? When would you expect those next upgrades to take place?
I'm doing a reevaluation of all of the servers that are out of spec in terms of their revisions now. And I'm hopeful that probably within the next couple months, we'll have to work towards a lull point when ideally after the school district has basically released for the summertime. So we can do some work without impacting services.
All right, let's go above you to Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have more of a comment and a little bit of a question. I want to thank you, Anthony. I heard the complaints district-wide about these issues, and I don't know if you understand how much willpower I had to exert not to pick up the phone and call you.
You can call me anytime.
No. I understood that you were working hard, and I'm glad I didn't call you because I knew this needed to get worked on. What I'd like to know, because I understand everything you said, and I understand what you're working on. I just want to put out in general, would it be possible? Because I know the summertime is typically when all IT departments do the majority of their configuration and transformational work. Would it be possible to come back in the fall and give us an update on what got changed and what got upgraded?
Absolutely.
As far as how things are going.
Sure.
Nothing super, nothing detailed, but I think a lot of us would feel better knowing how things are going to be going in the future. And like I said, I'm trying real hard not to get in anybody's way. That's all.
Hey, if you want to roll up your sleeves and jump in, feel free. I could use the help.
Don't say that. Gary might get upset if I show up one day with a screwdriver.
All right,
he goes up at my house, so.
Yeah. Madam Clerk, could you make a note then that we invite Mr. Rodriguez back to the October meeting? So we can get an update as to how we did at the opening. So back to, let's see, Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'll play the polar opposite of Joe, and I'll say I didn't understand everything that you said, but I do understand how hard you work at it. And honestly, just wanted to say thank you for the extensive amount of work, not just you, but I think also a special thanks to Natalia Brennan too, because and the entire team. But I think Natalia probably gets. Joe's good. Joe doesn't. I immediately reach out to Natalia and ask her what's going on, and most of the time, it's not even in her domain. So I really want to give her a huge amount of credit because I'm sure that there are like 6,000 staff members who do that too. But I really appreciate, I mean, I know what a challenge that was for you, for the staff, for the parents at home who were balancing all of that going on too. And it's not like we're used to running Google Meets in the classroom. So this has been, I guess it's good that we know what we're facing. But honestly, the hard work that you all put into getting that turned around quickly too, particularly while everyone was home on the Wednesday, and then getting everything back to basics by Thursday, was really appreciated.
I want to second that thank you to Miss Brennan, because I know as a student, she's the only name we know to call. So I can't imagine what her inbox was for those few days. Thank you as well.
Very good. Thank you, Anthony. I see you every day, so you know. Thank you.
Yes, you do.
Truly. All right, so now back to our superintendent.
And I'd like to thank Anthony for taking time, and I think it shows how invested he is to making sure that our students succeed. He's worked tirelessly shoulder to shoulder with Khan and Natalia, and it's just been great to get these issues addressed. So thank you very much, Anthony.
Hopefully we'll try to keep them to a minimum. This is going to be quite a challenge. We have more Chromebooks now throughout this district than we ever had. So we'll make it work.
Yeah, and I think that point is worth repeating. I mean, we essentially quadrupled our number of Chromebooks from what we had last year at this time. And we have not increased the staffing to deal with that, but we've brought with that, as we've increased our platform use and the number of applications that are running. It's expected that we would have these issues, but I think that the response Although sometimes puzzling, they have the stick-to-itness and the ability to really kind of isolate. And it's not a quick fix. It's not like the engine light in your car that comes on. I think Anthony and his team have really kind of gone through this very systematically.
One of the things that we're planning on doing is I'm going to be setting up the network operations center over at the high school, more like you would see in a corporate environment, where we'll have large screens monitoring, so that when you can just walk in the room, some of this stuff will jump out at you. It's a very broad and wide, complex network. To be able to see and look at things graphically would help us out a great deal. So that's part of this new technology rollout that we'll undertake in the summer.
All right, very good. Anybody else? Mr. Gray.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick thing. Once that knock is set up, I'd like to know if I'd be able to just come and observe it. You know, just stay out of the way. I'd just like to observe it. And
absolutely.
Is it cold in there?
It's never cold enough in a knock, but
I know. So when I come, I'll wear something warm. I understand.
Yes, and I'm going to ask you to help out.
Yeah, just let me know when it's ready. I'd like to at least observe it and take a look. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think you'll be impressed.
All right, very good. Superintendent, back to you.
Thank you very much. Getting back to our return to school, as we recall on our last meeting on Monday, March 15th, the school committee directed us to apply for a waiver, which we did. We submitted on March 17th. We spoke with the Department of Education over the phone regarding the waiver to see if there was any additional information that would be required. They noted that the waiver was complete and gave them a full picture of what we were seeking. They then noted that they would be here for a site visit, which they arranged for Monday, March 22nd, after having something tentatively scheduled for that Friday, the 19th. They sent a team of 5 DESE folks to meet with us. Assistant Superintendent McDonald and I met with DESE and brought them to the Salemwood School and the Beebe School. They observed our lunch program and processes, toured some classrooms, looked at common spaces, gyms, and hallways. They were very impressed with the way we have set up the schools and felt that they were safe and efficient. They suggested that we could set up some desks in the hallway.
I'm sorry, could I just, can you slow down for the interpreters?
Sure,
just a
I'm
tad.
sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
We'll see.
Happens to all of us. Yep.
They were impressed. I'm sorry, let me see. They observed lunch process where I just lost my place. I apologize. They suggested that we could set up desks in the hallways to help facilitate feeding students, but we felt that in some ways that created too many issues, including safety as well as cleanliness and hygiene. They officially informed us that our waiver to delay the reentry of our K-5 students that we asked for to April 26th, and to delay the reentry of our grade 6 to 8 students to May 10th was officially denied. They spoke to the fact that we have had our K-2 students in hybrid since February 4th, and our grades 3 and 4 students in hybrid since March 15th, provided, in their words, a sufficient runway towards a reentry, and ultimately denied the waiver based on that. During that time, in month of March, we held 2 parent forums, one on March 9th and one on March 30th. The March 9th forum had over 600 participants, and the one last Tuesday had over 250. We took literally hundreds of questions and feedbacks from our family, and seemed to go extremely well. An update on vaccines. Our staff received opportunities to be vaccinated on Monday, March 15th. We were invited to take part in a clinic over at Somerville, hosted by the City of Somerville's Health Department and Cambridge Health Alliance. There are 150 slots available for the Johnson & Johnson 1-dose vaccine, and we filled all 150 slots within a 2.5-hour period of registration. There was another clinic that was offered to us through the Chelsea Public Schools and Chelsea Health Department on Friday, March 26th. Again, that was a Johnson & Johnson vaccine. They offered us 250 slots. We were able to fill a little over 100. At this point, most of our staff is either fully vaccinated or have had at least their first dosage. Pool testing, as noted in previous meetings, we've been approved and are participating in the pool testing program through DESE. We've been matched with Concentric by Ginkgo as our medical partner. Patty Tremendozzi, our Director of Nursing, is working collaboratively with Concentric by Ginkgo. We received the test kits. We received support for testing service provider and the testing software to track results. It's been highly successful across the state, as you may have read. We've begun it here in Malden with our sports teams, and we will be beginning it with our educators in the next week. Last week, the commissioner announced that the state will pay for this program for the entire school year. Previously, it was only approved for the state to pick up the tab through April 18th, but because of the success of this and they feel it is a real tool, it has been extended. This involves mixing several test samples together in a batch, or what they call a pool, and the testing the pool sample with a PCR test for the detection of COVID. The approach increases the number of individuals that can be tested at one time and allows for regular testing of COVID-19. In addition, our schools, as we know, have the Abbott Binex Now rapid antigen diagnostic test that we use for follow-up, so that students or staff in a positive pool can be tested as soon as possible and receive individual results in 15 minutes. Students and staff will be notified by email with consent forms for participation. They're required to register with Project Beacon, along with the consent form by Concentric by Ginkgo, in order to participate in pool testing when that begins. It is strictly voluntary and is not required to attend in-person learning. However, we strongly encourage as many individuals, students and staff, to participate in this. The higher the percentage of participation, the more valid the pool testing becomes. The extended learning time grant update. At our February meeting, I noted that we were approached by DESE to apply for the grant, even though the Ferryway School is not an extended learning time school this year. It was voted by the staff last year to not participate in that and approved by the school committee. But because they were a ELT school last year, the department has made funding available to provide programming. So we applied for that, and we were just notified that we received the full grant of $803,000. That it is for the Ferryway School only and for the Ferryway students. However, we'll be looking at deploying that in a number of professional development opportunities that will be open to all staff, and then a combination of academic and enrichment programming through the school vacation and summers. As I said, this grant needs to be expended by August 31st, and I know the Ferryway staff, along with Dr. Chase, Ms. McDonald, and Ms. Mertz, are working ways in which we will be using that to get the most participation and impact for our students. An update on Eureka Math. Beginning in 2016, students in grades K to 5 were learning math using curriculum materials called My Math, published by McGraw-Hill. Knowing that the contract was in a yearly renewal stage, our Director of STEM, Dr. Doug Dias, worked with coaches to examine My Math in relation to other more current materials that are more rigorous and more closely aligned to the state standards. In school year 1920, the My Math contract was coming to a close. 22 teachers piloted Eureka Math in all schools, grades K to 5. During that time, math coaches were in communication with pilot teachers and building leadership. The overwhelming feedback from pilot teachers, coaches, and principals is that Eureka Math would be an excellent choice for our students beginning the school year 2021. With multiple layers of impact created by the pandemic, the district moved forward with the pilot in our grades 3 and 5 this year, and for those kindergarten through grade 2 teachers already using Eureka. As we stated last year, our thinking was that a pilot focused on the grades 3 to 5 would be more accessible to older students who would be more able to access the material in a remote setting. The grades 3 to 5 span also aligned with the MCAS years and would allow for more focused implementation that was sensitive to teacher and student needs as they would be implemented during challenging times. Our intention would be to expand the pilot even further to kindergarten through grade 2 for the upcoming 2021-2022 school year. We recognize that there would be challenges in implementation during a pandemic, and the slower rollout allowed us to begin the work towards more rigorous instruction while being sensitive to the needs of teachers and students as they navigated this model of school. Teachers have provided feedback throughout the year on their implementation of Eureka Math, and we continue to address the expected challenges associated with the implementation, not to mention during such a unique time. We remain committed to continued training and support, knowing that the growing pains of implementing any new program are outweighed by the benefits of more rigorous instruction that is better aligned to state and national standards. This past month, our Director of STEM and Building Math coaches have been presenting information about our K-5 math program to parents and caregivers. Feedback on these presentations has been universally positive. We are looking forward to expanding our Eureka Math pilot program to include all grade kindergarten through grade 2 teachers next year. Teachers will be trained this spring on the new material with a follow-up training in the fall. Eureka Math provides a Massachusetts curriculum frameworks aligned set of materials that is rigorous and appropriate for our students. It provides support for not only teachers, but parents as well. As we move forward, our more traditional model of school, we will provide additional support for families and teachers so that we will be equipped with the knowledge necessary to support their learners. Last week, we posted positions of learning support specialists. We are working with our educators union to find ways to make this transition to in-person learning as smooth as possible. We are in the process of hiring multiple learning support assistants. The learning support assistant will support students who access simultaneous learning through a remote medium. The learning support assistants will report in person to their assigned classroom and help the classroom teacher implement concurrent teaching. That is when some students are remote and some are in person. Other duties also may be assigned by the building administration. These are part-time, up to 19 hours per week, and pay $26 an hour. They are temporary and will expire at the end of this school year. We've had great interest and success so far. I think we had over 20 applications as of Friday morning. Athletics update. Our transportation question was raised at the last meeting regarding transportation to and from sporting events. The policy during COVID is that students must take the transportation provided by Malden High School. However, extenuating circumstances will be looked at on a case-by-case basis by our athletic department. Have an update on the food truck. The food truck grant that we secured, the truck is ours. It is currently somewhere in Western New York around Buffalo, being customized to provide both all three warming, cooling, and freezing capabilities. Then we will have the truck wrapped in Malden logo and colors. And we hope to have it back here in June, ready to deploy over the summer to our parks program and gets food to our families and students who need it. We also, just as we're looking towards the end of the school year, pending Board of Health approval, as we know, the virus can change and can restrict some of the activities we have, but we have some tentative schedules for our high school. Tuesday, May 25th is tentatively scheduled for the National Honor Society induction ceremony. The 26th is slated to be senior awards night. The prom is May 27th at this point. I'm sorry, prom assembly, and then the prom will be on Friday, May 28th. Our graduation is scheduled for Sunday, June 6th, and with a graduation rain date of Monday, June 7th. Again, these are all tentative dates. At this point, we're on, but again, we will be working with Chris Webb and the Board of Health. This is also a reminder that April vacation begins next Friday as our last day of school, and we will be back on school on Monday, the 26th. And then just as I wrap up, we're begin the home stretch towards the end of the school year. We are really glad to welcome more and more students into our buildings. It was really wonderful to see as many students as we saw today. It's starting to look a little more normal. I would like to thank our staff, our families, and our students for being patient and supportive during this entire process. I just want to thank everybody for following the safety mandates, working with us, and making sure everybody's safe. And that concludes my report at this time.
Thank you. Let's take some questions from the members. Any questions on the superintendent's report? Mr. Weldai, then over to Ms. Spadafora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple, I'll try to quickly run through them. When I was looking at your report, Superintendent, on the timeline for return, I know it's sort of bulleted in. It has the different dates of I know April's going to be a busy month of the hybrid and the in-person, but the in-person full for middle school was left off. It's April 28th, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So
it is. It is left off. I apologize.
No. Well, I didn't know if it was purposeful because I know at the forum that you and the mayor had, there was a question about whether or not that we would be looking at the 26th versus the 28th. And I was personally hoping we would keep the 28th. So is that what the plan is?
I advocate for keeping the 28th. I think the day after vacation is a little hectic sometimes. So we would be looking at the 28th.
That would be great. I agree with you. I was a little worried as well about the potential for out-of-state travel happening during break, as well as just knowing what a building is like on a Monday after vacation, having that be an entry point. It just seemed like a challenging time to change things up again for our staff. So I'm glad to hear it's still the 28th. Just a quick note of thanks on the vaccine. I think for the folks at home, so much goes on behind the scenes that I think a lot of people will never really know. I know the superintendent worked hard at securing that. The Somerville partnership. I know, Mr. Chairman, you worked extraordinarily hard with the 5 DP districts, and Chelsea really came through with us on scoring the Chelsea partnership. I think working in conjunction, I saw on my email that Deb Gesualdo, the MEA president, sent out did sort of a check to see how many people needed vaccines, where they were, and so that data was able to be used alongside the mayor and the superintendent to actually set some of these things up. And I think just overall, so much went on behind the scenes, I think, to get folks feeling ready and comfortable to come back to school that I'm very appreciative. And I know we see a lot of that stuff posted on social media at the very end of something happening, and people are like, oh, that's great. But a lot went on behind the scenes. And I think just expressing appreciation was important. And the only other question that I had was in terms of the high school events. I know by the time our next meeting happens, it's going to be May, and some of those events are in May. Do we anticipate the Board of Health will make some determinations soon, and would we potentially know what they are at our May meeting?
I would suspect, but again, I think if we've learned one thing with this, it's not to bank on anything. I think some of the guidance that's come up from the state around proms is helpful, that I think one of which is that it happens after the seniors have left, so they're not coming back into the building. I think we need to look at that. I think, Mr. Webb, I think, has been extremely thoughtful and cautious around these preparations. So we hope to have a little more information with that, especially a month from now, where we'll see where we are. I think that there's a real hope with public health officials that with more people being vaccinated, that this may slow some of the spread down, but I think we're also looking at always a number of other factors that are out there too.
Well, thank you, Superintendent. And I also just want to express my appreciation. I know we did vote to sort of to seek the waiver from DESE. It was not successful. I still think, at least as one member, we made the right call, but I know, it's still the amount of work that went into getting everything set up and the quick turnaround on behalf of the school principals, the assistant principals, the custodial staff, just everybody coming together so quickly is admirable. And hopefully people had a smooth and happy first day today.
Very good.
Thank you,
Now
Mr.
we're going to go to
Chairman.
Ms. Spadafora, followed by our student representative. So Ms. Spadafora first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to also, thank our superintendent and you as well, Mr. Chair, on the Q&A town hall that was hosted last week to answer questions. I think, we applied for the waiver. It came back pretty quickly that, it wasn't approved, and we turned around really quick to get that Q&A session out there so parents weren't entering this April 5th with unanswered questions. So I really appreciate everything, the thought and effort that was put in by both of you to make sure we got information out as quickly as possible. With that being said, I just have a question that in regards to technology that I think I know myself have, but other parents. So all of our students were issued Chromebooks at the beginning of this year, thankfully. But I know some students actually don't use them. They already had devices in their own home, laptops that they were using. But I'm under the impression that they cannot bring those devices into the school. They must use the Chromebook. So I just want to make sure that I'm correct in that, Superintendent, that if a child has their own personal device, only the city issued or the district issued Chromebooks can be used in the classroom.
That's correct. That's what we support. We can't support private devices. That's correct.
Okay, and as a parent, I was fortunate that my student had a device already. So ours kind of became a backup if their battery died or whatnot. We had that backup, but just knowing that you can't bring your own Chromebook, MacBook, whatever it may be into the school as they're rolling in. Oh gosh, I lost my train of thought here on my next question. And this was a big topic that came up in the town hall Q&A in regards to students being sick in school. And as we're in April, many of our students have allergies, pollen, the seasons are changing. We have the sniffles, we have, red itchy eyes. Just curious how that's going to work if a student is showing symptoms, because these symptoms are very similar to COVID symptoms, and they, have a runny nose. They're sent home because, we have better safe than sorry. Do all students require a note to re-enter school from their physician? Is there a minimum set amount of time before they can come back? So if one is sent home and they see their pediatrician immediately and they say, oh, it's only, seasonal allergies, can they come back the next day?
I would probably defer to our nursing director on that, but I think right now where everybody is on hyper alert with anything that is COVID symptoms. And if you look at that, it really runs the spectrum there, from temperatures to allergies. And I mean, I've heard in other districts where people have thought, well, it's just allergies and, it's persistent, and it's not. So we want our families to call in when they have those symptoms. They'll be referred to the nurse, and the nurse will walk them through it, and will, in all cases, probably direct them to follow up with a physician and probably get a COVID test just to be certain.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, over to Ms. Davidson.
I mean, you could get an alternative diagnosis, I guess, too. But you would most likely be referred to your physician for that.
All right, Ms. Davidson.
Thank you. So I had a quick question before, but now I have a few. So my first one was for junior varieties for the class of 2022. Can we please put that on our radar as some sort of Malden High event somewhere in the future? because I know that is the primary funding for prom. And as a part of the class of 2022, we are behind on that. And it would be something that would be a tremendous help, even if it could be a possibility. And I know that would be more of the student council working with that, not quite me, but just putting that out there.
Well, let's
And-
stop you there, Ms. Davidson. You don't have to tell us that because
Yeah.
your principal has been on us on Zoom calls with us repeatedly, trying to figure out a way to make this happen. And I believe Principal Mastrangelo, I think we have, right?
Yeah, we're in good shape. We've been working, and I appreciate the support we've gotten from the city and Chris Webb. We're already rehearsing, and we have a date set. We're tentative, as Superintendent O'Terry said, everything's tentatively, but we're tentatively set for, I believe it's May 14th and 15th. We try to set it 2 weeks before the prom, and still in time when the seniors are here. We have our limitations of how many people we can seat inside, but and we're also working now on ways that we can, to the fundraising point, Juliana, of ways that we can have people pay to get it live streamed, because it's going to be significantly reduce the amount of people who can come in and pay, but we're going to try to find a way that we can affix a payment to the live streaming. But we're all about making sure that our class of 22 has their #1 fundraiser, and beyond that, keeping the tradition alive. If you remember last year, Junior Varieties was March 5th and March 6th. It was literally the last event we had at Malden High School before we all went in quarantine. So we're on point, and I appreciate the support that we've gotten from the city side on that as well. But your junior class officers and Mr. Jakowski have been on it for months.
And Principal Mastrangelo, before I go back to Ms. Davidson, I'm looking at their GoFundMe page. Of the $1,000 that they were looking to raise, they're at $680 right now.
Yeah.
So they're making progress. So anybody wishing to take a look at that and spread the word, I'm looking at them on Instagram, which let me see what they are. I think it's Malden CO22. Is that their?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, Malden CO22. If you go on Instagram and take a look at that, that page, they have a link for Junior Varieties. Back to you, Ms. Davidson.
Thank you so much. And so for the Chromebook being required in-person learning rather than a personal device, I was just wondering if that also pertains to high school, because I haven't heard any of that notice, and that might be a thing that we would look into.
So,
I think it can. I guess I'd caution about, bringing in a device like that could get broken. I'd always worry about, theft or being lost. But we really want to keep, I think, and Anthony could probably speak more to it. When we have all the same device in there and we have to troubleshoot, it certainly makes it a lot easier. We can push out updates and security on our own devices. That is paramount right now. When other devices come in, it makes it a lot more challenging. And I think Anthony's here to probably chime in on that as well.
Yeah, it's devices from the home are problematic at this point because everything that we are doing is integrated into the G Suite. So there's a lot of standardized process there. So we'd like to kind of keep everything under one umbrella.
Okay, back to you, Ms. Davidson.
Thank you for the explanation. I just wasn't sure because I haven't heard anything from our teachers on what was happening. Okay, that is all for my questions. Thank you again.
All right, very good. Mr. Iovino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question to the superintendent. Superintendent O'Terry, with regard to that extended learning time grant, I'm assuming that there will be some programs, a number of them, hopefully, that are going to address some of the gaps in academic achievement that have unfortunately happened as a result of the pandemic. Would you be able to furnish us by the May meeting, or certainly the June meeting, with a list of any such programs that are going to be made available to the students in the Malden Public Schools?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. I mean, it is one of the tenets that they want is that it's, design instructional supports to address the learning gaps that have probably occurred from the disruption in learning through COVID and other factors. They're certainly looking at, obviously, the core subjects of math and English writing, as well as science. So, they're all MCAS sensitive too. That's important. So yes, we will be looking at those as well.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? If I might, let me just add to what the superintendent said. What is that I had attended the welcome back to students at the St. Elmo's School today. And superintendent, let me just say, it's a day I won't forget for a long time, as usually these types of days are. But let's face it, you know, today you had a big swath of kids coming back. The state had denied our waiver. Not sure what the environment was going to be. You know, a lot of the teachers were getting their second shot, but I can't say enough how impressed I was with the teachers' professionalism, eagerness, and just overall representation of the district and our community. They were, without a word, fantastic in how they welcomed back our families and students. It was so impressive. And then, of course, your administrative team led by Principal Van goes without saying. And I think the moment I'll remember is, as you mentioned at the outset of your report, she said, you know, we have some teachers out. And I said, well, you know, how could I help? And she said, well, I put you in a classroom. Let's see if you can first handle lunch duty. So she said, can you come back at 10:45? Sure, I'll come back 10:45. 10:45 to 2 o'clock, serving lunch. It's an experience that I soon won't forget. I will never look at the cafeteria the same way again. So I hope everybody on this call will join me. If you see any of our team, our cafeteria workers and the administrators and the teachers and everything that's involved with pulling that off, it is something to see. And I also want to ask Ms. Spadafora, when I think we've already begun, but when we really get into the budget, let's give that a look-see, because what caught me off guard today was Principal Van from 10:45 to 2 o'clock never left lunch. You know, so here we have our principal of a, you know, our largest school in the district outside of the high school, I believe. That's where she was the entire time. So I don't know what the answer is there, but we should take a look at that to see, you know, what we could do to help. And just overall, making sure that the resources are there for that. Because I'll tell you, that it's an operation like no other. I mean, I know the superintendent's talked to me about it, and we've talked about it with the union, but until you see it and you're in it, it's you know, it's a moment I won't forget. So I'd ask you during your deliberations if you could, you know, just give that a look-see to make sure that we're doing all that we can to support our team there. You know, the custodians, it's like a school unto a school when you see this unfold. And superintendent, the way they did it, it's impressive. I mean, they took over the field house and they had it separated and they had them come in at different times. And it was just, I was very, very impressed, you know, so.
It is
hats off.
Taking up all day. Our principals are there for those 2.5 to 3 hours. It's a lot. And it means a lot of other things get pushed off and it makes their day longer. We really need as much help as we can get in the cafeteria. It's really, you know, I have such respect and admiration for our principals during this whole time. They've been absolutely phenomenal. But it is, you know, as these things come up, it takes away from the regular duties of what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, it's become almost like lunch is in some ways become what they build their day around. And that's not really a sustainable model going forward. But unfortunately, that's what we have to do right now. But we really need as much help as we can.
Yeah. I mean, I had to sit down at one of those little desks 4 or 5 times. I just don't know how it's done. I mean, I was really, really impressed. So,
I mean, their day, and then you add on, you know, I don't know if you noted it, but, you know, certainly the entry of our students into the building and the dismissal.
Right.
It's not like it was in the past, right? We've got to make sure that our kids are spaced apart, that they're going out in an orderly fashion, more so than you've ever had to. So, I mean, that's much of their day has become logistical shepherding.
Yeah, the bathroom breaks, I saw it all. So I don't want to say too much more because I'm waiting for Principal Van's evaluation of my day. So I want to hold off on saying anything further, but kudos, truly. So, all right, well, thank you, Superintendent. Let's jump down to subcommittee reports and discussions. Let's hear from Mr. Iovino first about space and enrollment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just as an aside, my day was 11:50 a.m. until 1:20 a.m. for lunch duty, in and out. It's unbelievable. Now you know. The enrollment for the Malden Public Schools as of Friday, as of Thursday, as of Friday, I apologize, is 6,189 students. I did note that our enrollment for kindergarten applications is up to 412, which the director of the PIC tells me is higher than normal in view of the fact that placements really won't be starting until July. So it's a high number. But the winter of 2015, 2016 was very snowy. So I guess a lot of people spent a lot of time inside. In any case, we'll be the beneficiary of that. I am trying just in addition, Mr. Chairman, to put together a meeting with Ms. Spadafora's budget subcommittee. I want to get in touch with Mr. Rogers at the Early Learning Center, Miss McDonald, Superintendent, and we can't seem to jive days this week. So we're looking at hopefully Monday or Tuesday of next week to have a discussion about preschool.
All right, keep us posted.
I will do that.
Any questions? If not, we'll go over to Mr. Weldai for policy and procedures update.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll add on to Mr. Iovino and say my day is 11 o'clock to 12:30 or so in the cafeteria, right?
That's an easy one, Adam.
It's a lot easier. It's what we do. It's National Assistant Principals Week, so kudos to all the folks who spend most of their days in a cafeteria. But our Policy and Procedures Subcommittee met on March 22nd. We had 2 items on our agenda. The employee child enrollment request, which you'll see below, so we'll get to that in a bit, as well as the student handbooks review. We're meeting again next Monday, April 12th, to do a check-in on the student handbooks review, and I'll save the employee child request until we get down to motions and resolutions.
All right, very good. Any questions? If none, let's stay with Mr. Weldai on equity and opportunity.
I don't know if I can call on her, Mr. Chair. Ms. Spadafora is waving at you.
Oh, Ms. Spadafora, go right ahead.
Sorry, I don't think I'm in your line of sight tonight. So when I throw my hand up, it might get mistaken, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Weldai. We also discussed we discussed program of studies.
That was in equity.
Oh, my apologies.
That's okay. It's the next one.
On to the next one. I apologize.
All right, Mr. Weldai.
So the next one's equity and opportunity, where Ms. Spadafora, Ms. Long, Mr. McCarthy, and I discussed 2 items coming up on motions and resolutions, the Malden High School Program of Studies and the Linden Accelerated Enrichment Program, the AEAP program. So I'll save both of those for when we get to motions and resolutions as well.
All right, any questions there? All right, and then finally, let's go to Ms. Spadafora to get an update from the Budget Subcommittee.
Thank you. My apologies, Mr. Weldai. When we have those back-to-back meetings, they kind of all run together a bit. So, and I want to say, as everybody is at schools doing their lunch duty, I'm still an at-home parent that's providing lunch from 8 a.m. until 2:15. And that's the job of a teacher mom until we're back full time. So as for the budget subcommittee met on last Monday. We're still early in on the budget process, and Ms. Mertz, our business manager, provided updates on our current fiscal year budget, so fiscal year 21, as well as the upcoming fiscal year 22 budget. Right now, we're on track with our fiscal year 21 budget, utilizing 75% of the allocated funding. As the fiscal year 22 budget, we are asking our state legislators to advocate for using the September 2019 enrollment figures for our funding. With numbers dropping drastically due to COVID, we need the stability of the 2019 numbers to fund our schools accordingly. And last year, the budget subcommittee hosted our state legislators in a subcommittee meeting, and we're looking to host them again. We have plans to welcome them back this year. It's really imperative that we talk to them in regards to using those enrollment figures to make sure we have the funding to adequately fund our district in the coming year. I don't have a set date yet, but we'll communicate that as scheduled. As Mr. Iovino mentioned, we are working with our space and enrollment subcommittee to look at space issues that tie into budget issues with the ELC. Still in the early stages of meeting with principals, business managers, superintendent on how we envision, September enrollment to look. Ms. Mertz provided an update on our summer programming and before and after school programming, and we're happy to announce that both of those will be offered, and more information will be coming out very, very soon, specifically for our summer programming. We have numerous different programming, whether it's city hosted through our rec department or our Title I, but that will be coming out shortly. And then lastly, as the superintendent mentioned, our food truck is in New York State right now being outfitted with all the necessary equipment. I'm very, very excited for this endeavor because it's going to provide much needed meals to our families this summer and then ongoing. So again, we will be reconvening shortly with all of that. And I really look forward to bringing in our state legislators to just make sure funding is secured for our district.
All right, very good. Any questions? Mr. Iovino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the superintendent, Mr. Rotary, wasn't there discussion earlier in the year in line with what Jennifer was just saying about them looking at a 3-year average of our attendance? Because obviously this number does not reflect our attendance in the past several years.
There's been some discussion about going back to the October 1st, 2019 number, which most districts are advocating for. There's been notions thrown around of using a 3-year average. Right now, we know the enrollment in the state is down almost 4%, and it's higher in urban districts like ours. So I know that the House and the Senate would like to not use the October 1st, 2020 number because I know that it penalizes almost every school district out there. So I think that we're, working with our state legislatures. I know Senator Lewis has been an advocate for going back to the 2019. And I know the Superintendent's Association, we've signed off of position statements and letters going to the 2019 enrollment figure.
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, let's go to motions and resolutions. Let's hear from Mr. Froyo. Malden Seventh-day Adventist Church donation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We received a letter from the Malden Seventh-day Adventist Church. Malden has been home for the Malden Temple Seventh-day Adventist Church for almost 10 years, and we came to love this city. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, our church is closing its doors, and we would like to give a little back to the school for all that you've done for the kids and family during this pandemic. We look fondly on your work feeding the kids during the tough times from so many. And we would like to contribute $3,800 to help whatever you see necessary. May God bless you and bless this city. It's $3,800 donated to the school system.
I'll second that.
So, Mr. Foyer, you're making a motion. We have to accept, right?
Yes.
All right, motion by Mr. Foyer, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Any questions? Just one from the chair. Which church, Mr. Foyer?
At 577 Salem Street, they're located.
Okay, any other questions?
Get down towards Maplewood Square, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's Bryant Street.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, no, just really quick, that is very, very generous.
No, it's unbelievable.
$3,800.
Yeah, so
Wow.
I'll make sure I jot them a note on behalf of all of us, thanking them.
Thank you.
All right, so we have the motion seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Let's go to Mr. Weldai on the employee child enrollment request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I believe everyone has a copy of this in their packet. We originally got this request, I believe, in the February school committee meeting, sent it to policy. The policy committee met, deliberated. This is a request from Tracy Mahoney. She's a CMA under Patty Tramandozzi, also works in the Parent Information Center with Joan Federico. And the policy committee voted unanimously to accept the request to allow entrance into the Malden Public Schools for the 2021-2022 school year.
All right. Any questions of Mr. Weldai? Mr. Drummy?
That doesn't take us over the cap, does it, Adam?
No, it takes us right to the cap.
All right.
Good question. Anybody else? Ms. Spadafora?
Just for clarification, Mr. Weldai, you said it for the 2021-2022 school year. It's
to begin.
It's ongoing until the employee leaves, or ongoing, but it's starting this year.
Thank you. That's a better clarification. To begin 2021-2022 school year.
All right, thank you, Ms. Spadafora. Anybody else? If not, we'll entertain any motions.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Iovino, seconded by Mr. Drummy. Everybody clear? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Let's stay with Mr. Weldai regarding the Linden Accelerated and Enrichment Program, otherwise known as AEAP.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Equity and Opportunity Committee met. We had a sort of a repeat discussion of the discussion that we held last spring. This time, sort of re-examining a similar set of information with our Assistant Superintendent, Kelly Chase, with Superintendent O'Terry, and with the Linden Principal, Ray Garcia. And so the decision before the committee tonight is essentially what we're going to do again with the AEAP program admissions policy, particularly while this is the time of year, we're approaching the time of year where people would normally apply. Last year, as a reminder, we decided as a group to put a 1-year pause on new admittance into the program. So essentially, the group of kids that would have entered the first grade did not happen. And so the Linden AEAP first grade class just became a regular ed first grade class. Back when we made the decision, I think we had no idea we would still be in an almost full year of remote learning, and we had plans to examine and think about a future of the program as well as criteria for admission. And we were not able to do that this school year. So the decision that the Equity Committee was faced with was do we, and you could sort of see the outlines that are optioned, or outlines that are given in the memo from our Assistant Superintendent, do we kind of restart and hit play again with status quo and just admit students and just begin the process all over, say, all right, we'll have a first grade class and we're going to have a second grade class, because remember, there are no kids moving up to grade 2. Or option number 2, which is what our Equity Committee voted unanimously to endorse is to also just press the pause button one more time and postpone enrollment for the 2021-2022 school year for students in grades 1 and 2. And that way we have the real target goal is to actually spend some time studying this over the next couple of months so that by January of 22, we'll be able to come back with a recommendation on what, what we hope as a district, the future of the program will look like. We also spoke, between the assistant superintendent, the principal, about some of the challenges in successfully and equitably assessing students where they are and trying to determine, criteria for being admitted into an academically enriched and accelerated program at a year when everyone is sort of facing a level playing field of learning loss in a sense. So the recommendation tonight from the Equity Committee that we're hoping the full committee will endorse as well is option number 2, to postpone enrollment for the 2021-2022 school year. So essentially next year, the same thing that happened with the first grade class going from AAP to regular ed would happen to the second grade class. That we'd lose one AAP room, it would become a regular ed classroom. No positions will be lost. And then the following year, we'll have sort of the determination about the big picture. Do we reinvest moving down again? What does it look like, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a little long-winded, but that's where we're at.
Okay, and Mr. Weldai, we need to act on that tonight.
Yes.
We have to take an affirmative stance. Okay. All right, any questions of Mr. Weldai? If Ms. Davidson.
Do we know when, so for middle schoolers, if they are in AAP or were in the past, will they be continuing their AAP journey or will they be going back to gen ed classes?
Nothing is changing for students in grades. For anyone who's in the program now, nothing is changing. So this is all about new admittance to the program.
And will any new admittance be kind of thought about for going past grade 2? Like if a 4th grader wanted to go into the gifted, would they be able to?
Not from out, that's a great question. Not from out of the actual building itself, but they'll have an opportunity within Linden to level off some of their class numbers if they choose to.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Any other questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Ms. Spadafora, seconded by Ms. Luong. Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
1.
Mr. Gray is opposed. So it carries 8-1. All right. Let's move on to the Malden High School Program of Studies. Mr. Weldai.
Right. I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Principal Mastrangelo. The Equity and Opportunity Committee met with Principal Mastrangelo 2 weeks ago and unanimously also endorsed moving forward to approve the high school program of studies. But I'll turn it over to him because he's here with us tonight.
And before we do that, Mr. Weldai, our translators are here until 8.
Yes.
So unless we want them to go past, I don't know what arrangements you've worked out.
Here, I'll respond to Danielle.
Offline, okay. All right, let's go to our principal, Mr. Angelo. Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Before I even get into it, I really need to take a second to identify and really recognize the faculty that went in, that really put a lot of time and effort into this. So you allow me to just recognize Sharon Gallagher, Ryan Gallagher, Rebecca Corcoran, Heather Northrup, Elizabeth Tyrell, Tom Snarsky, Joe Luongo, Beth Horowitz, Brian Morrison, Ann O'Connor, Lou DeFonte, and we also had the parent volunteer was Crystal Hayes, and Holland House principal Marta Cabral oversaw all the proceedings, and then it was kicked up to Aaron Craven and I to really kind of go through and go you just review the work, and then Erin did a lot of work with the actual document itself. So again, we follow the process of having a committee. Committee made recommendations, suggestions, and then it get kicked up to myself, and then it all comes to you all at this point. So I really would be really doing a disservice if I didn't mention the incredible amount of time they put in on their own time after hours during a pandemic. More screen time for them. Incredibly appreciative for all the effort they put forward to this. And we're moving towards where we want to go. I mean, we really are moving towards a more diverse curriculum, but we're doing it with strategically and knowing that we're taking all things into account. We recognize, and this came up in the meeting with Mr. Weldai and Ms. Spadafora, about how we're folding a lot of our cultural work into the current curriculum. A perfect example, the most wholesale changes were our level 4 offerings for our world languages are now going to move away from traditional grammar and writing and reading, although it's still going to be a part of it, but we're shifting towards a cultural lens. And with our French and our Italian and our Spanish and so forth. We're also making a significant change with moving towards American Sign Language as another course offering, we feel. And I do have to credit Sharon Gallagher, who is our lead teacher in world languages, and Marta Cabral, who is a Holland House principal, as I mentioned, but also in her previous job was a director of world languages in a previous district. So they have a great deal of knowledge in that. And we feel as if this would be a great offering, diversify our offerings, and also be able to find certified teachers to do so. And with hoping as we move forward, that's the other thing this committee did. They started already working towards next year's program of studies, where we're really trying to move towards aligning ourselves with Mass Core, also going deeper into our vision of a graduate work and aligning our curriculum with our vision of a graduate. That really the faculty did an amazing job doing it. So we've already had subcommittees around potentially changing graduation requirements, putting our electives in different buckets that align with our vision of our graduates. That's exciting work for the following school year that's already begun. We've also created some new electives for our EL students around financial literacy and also community literacy, which Lou DeFonte came forward with those offerings, and I think it's going to be great for our EL students. The Grow Your Own, we already spoke about. We're excited, and as I told the group, that stemmed really from a conversation Greg and I had in my office a couple of years ago. But wouldn't it be great to get kids from Malden and align with colleges? And then that grant became available, and then Greg and Dr. Chase kind of just went with it. And of course, whenever you bring Dana Marie Brown into it, it always gets better. And we really looked at our Math 1 offering, which has been an issue in the past, where we only offered it at the honors level. We now have a dual offering of honors and CP. Really, that's coming from the lens of equity for our students. And we looked at some numbers in our science classes and our failure rate. And we determined a lot of our failure rate in some of our science classes really moved back towards some math concerns. So we added a half-year course for computational science, which is really focused on the math needs for our science teachers. And if there's any questions, I can answer any, but that's really the quick elevator version of what we're doing.
All right, very good. And just a reminder, if we could slow down just a tad for the interpreters. Let me ask Mr. Weldai and Ms. Spadafora, what was the vote of the committee?
It was a unanimous vote. Myself, Ms. Spadafora, and Ms. Long.
Ms. Long, okay. All right, let's take some questions. Any questions? Only fitting we start with Ms. Davidson.
Just a quick one out of curiosity. Have we ever had a committee for the program of studies that's made of students? I think that student insight, I don't know if that's a thing, but it would be a good thing to have.
Is there a student on there, Mr. Principal?
We have student insight, and the committee works with students to get insight as they move forward. We didn't have a student per se on the committee, but we worked with the student voice project to get some insight from those students, and then we also had some of our teachers working with students as well. So there's definitely a student lens in this, and there's definitely a student voice in these decisions.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mastrangelo.
You're welcome, Juliana. Thank you.
Any other questions? Just back to Ms. Spadafora, Mr. Weldai, if I may, Ms. Long. Does this match up with what Ms. Mertz is counting for in next year's budget?
I guess that's going to be directed more towards myself, his budget. Yes, I think, you know, in the lens of the high school. So in speaking with Mr. Mastrangelo, like ASL is only going to be one class. It's just being offered this year. It's not going to be, you know, we're not looking at levels 2, 3, and 4 per se. The Grow Your Own was coming off of a grant. And I don't know if Miss Mertz is still on. I'm just trying to oh, there she is, if she can give any input. But I know the high school has been, what's the word I'm looking for? Contained in a budget stance. I think the equity that we're looking for in a budget stance has really been in our K through 8s that we've kind of had some difficulty in maintaining when it comes budget wise, the offerings that are equitable across the city. But I'm going to let Ms. Mertz chime in for a moment.
So there are a couple of things at the high school. Ideally, in an ideal world, we'd like to get the high school up to Mass Core certified. And by doing some of these program of studies and some of these offerings, we're actually heading in the right direction to get them Mass Core certified. I'm not sure if all of the offerings are in the budget that Mr. Mastrangelo had requested, but I will review that again with Mr. Mastrangelo.
But Ms. Mertz, there's nothing from your end that would prevent us from voting tonight, because once we do, ostensibly, that means that what's in there will be in the budget for FY 2022.
I don't think there's anything that prevents you from voting on that, correct?
And Mr. Weldai?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, not to interrupt. Not necessarily. I mean, I think they're tied together in idea, but not in practice, because the program of studies isn't a budgetary document. So, I mean, if we can't fund a certain thing, it would still exist in the program of studies. It just might not exist in real life just yet. So I think voting on the program of studies tonight doesn't necessarily, I think we still have to vote on the budget when it's time for the budget, but it shouldn't prevent us from voting on the program of studies tonight.
Yeah, I was just thinking ideally though it would, right? Because I assume what the principal will do next is once this is voted on by us, word will start getting out to students and others that this is what we're looking at doing next year. So you would hope that it would align.
Ideally it would. I mean, I think I bite my tongue a lot because most of my comments involve saying Ms. Mertz should probably be a part of that discussion, but I think she already has enough on her plate. But I think you're right. Ideally it would. So I think as long as you know, in the future, I think maybe if it would make more sense to sort of loop in Tony or her staff, you know, her future staff, hopefully before.
Yeah. Could we do that?
If I might also, I think that Mr. Weldai made a point that bears repeating. This is separate from the budget. The program of studies is really a curriculum document. You know, enrollment in courses is dependent upon course selection too. So you may have an under enrollment and you may not run a course because it's under enrolled, but it still resides in the program of studies. And I think that, you know, what we do is we look at where the courses are, and in May, you're really deciding on what you can run and what you can't. You may need extra courses or even staff in one and potentially less in another. So it's always a balance, but they really should be two separate entities. One is budgetary, which is separate, and then this is really a curriculum document.
Yeah, I mean, I won't belabor it, but I understand about if there's not enough enrollment, that's something you have no control over, but you do have control over whether or not it will be funded. So again, I don't know what prompted me to bring this up. I think there was a time in the past that we had approved it and we had announced that, you know, this was going to happen. And then because of budgetary reasons, it did not. So I just thought it might be helpful, not now, I mean, what's done is done, but in the future, maybe have Ms. Mertz part of those conversations. So, you know, we could be better assured that what it is we're doing, especially when we're adding new initiatives, her part of the discussion or her team to, you know, make sure that when it's approved, that it will happen.
Sir, can I just clarify one thing that I believe Ms. Spadafora brought up with the ASL program? We would be offering only ASL 1 this year, obviously, because it's not offered anywhere. Well, maybe not so obvious, I'm sorry. It's not often anywhere. Our hope would be that we could continue that, and the following year, we would be able to offer ASL 2, and would just be a change in the sections. So instead of having 5 sections of ASL 1, the second year we may have 3 sections of ASL 1 and 2 sections of ASL 2, and then continue to grow. I thought, maybe I misheard, but I thought Ms. Spadafora had mentioned that it was only going to be for this year. I just wanted to clarify that it would only be ASL 1 for this year, and then we would have the offerings for 2 and 3 as it moved forward. But I think it could still stay within 1 position. But if you want to give me more, that's great. I'll take more, Ms. Mertz.
All right, very good. Again, another reason why maybe just to have, our budget team at least give it a cursory review before we approve it. Ms. Spadafora, then back to Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to touch upon what you brought up, I think I'm not going to say it's not doable. I think it's absolutely feasible, putting in some work. I think just the timeline in which when they're creating the program of studies, I mean, here we are in March and we're not even, completely into fiscal year 22 budget. And I think that creates a little bit of difficulty when it comes to making sure that the requests align with our budget. So maybe we need to relook at the timeline in which, we work on the program of studies in conjunction with the budget. I know the program of studies needs to be done because students are going to be, choosing these subjects in April and May, working with their guidance counselors. But as you know, a lot of times when it comes to the budget and what's coming down from, the governor, happens a lot later. So we don't necessarily know what we're working with. So, I mean, more than happy to work with, in the past, we did have like an academic subcommittee that was handling our looking over the program of studies. I don't know if that's something that we want to look into and collaborating together. I just foresee that's where there becomes some difficulties in making sure that what we're offering is completely in line with the budget.
Okay. Mr. Weldai?
Yeah, I wasn't going to comment, and then I just feel like it's also important to note, and it's separate but related, and this is one of my priorities. I think once we get to budget season, is that we are sort of talking about Ms. Mertz and her budget team, and it's a team of one because she's by herself. I think we have a very lean budget office and finance department, and so I think that's also part of it, right? Is that there are a lot of comparable districts, I think, have at least an additional budget analyst or someone to sort of work with the budget director. So ideally, maybe next year when we have, hopefully, I'm going to heavily advocate for one staff person in that office that could work on the budgeting aspect as well. And they could work with the principals, I think, a little more closely. Whereas I think this year in particular, right, and if you were at budget subcommittee, Tony did a great job of outlining the exponential growth in grants that she is managing this year alone, also by herself. And so I think that, I totally understand where you're coming from. I think with our staffing situation now, it might not be realistic to sort of have the budget piece playing at the same time as, let's say, the program of studies is being developed. But I think you're right. That's something that we should work towards, because why wouldn't we?
Well, Principal Mastrangelo, so Grow Your Own, that is a new course. That's a new position with new credits.
I don't think it's necessarily it's a new course, but I don't think it's necessarily a new position. I think we can absorb it with our current current load of teachers in that sense.
Oh, okay.
Same with the ASL piece. There's some finagling with ASL and moving on from Latin and so forth. So I mean, I want to stay in my lane. I don't want to get into Tony Mertz's lane ever.
Yeah.
I want to stay in my lane. But I do think that what we put forward, I know that we're moving towards mass core, and Tony and I have had many conversations about what we need to get there, and hopefully we're going to get there.
All right, very good. So any other questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion, right, to approve. So Mr. Weldai, is that yours, your motion?
Sure.
Seconded by Ms. Spadafora. All right, there you have it. If there are no other questions, why don't we vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's stay with you. Now let's go to Ms. Luong now. Malden Public Schools Bullying Prevention and Intervention Plan 2020-2021.
Hello, yes, so in looking over our bullying and prevention plan, the superintendent did send me the current plan. And in looking at some of the regulations, I believe in, it's time for us to take this back to the task force that we put in place this year, that just because of COVID and everything we've had to work out, we've kind of put it in a little bit of a backseat. But I think it's time for us to get this back to the task force or to the policy committee for us to look at it. We need some student input. I believe we need some parent input into making sure that this plan still makes sense to us years later.
All right, so are you looking tonight, Ms. Long, for us to act, or?
I'm looking for us just to make that so my motion would be to either send this to the bully task force to make a recommendation, or to send this to policy subcommittee to have us act on it from a policy standpoint.
All right, what's the committee's pleasure? Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah, just really quick. I think that we should refer this to policy so we can kind of take a deep dive into sort of the language. If Ms. Long doesn't have any objection to that.
Okay, Ms. Long.
I'd actually, to be honest, I'd actually prefer go back to the bully task force first, because they should be taking a bigger dive at it, because that's where hopefully we're going to get the student input, the parent input, in the principal's input, especially, Mr. Mastrangelo and the rest of the principals, all to take kind of a deeper dive, and then we can bring it into the policy, answer any questions policy has, and hopefully we'd answer a lot of their questions. It's no matter to me either way, but if I had my preference, it would go there first. But
Ms. Davidson.
I fully agree with Ms. Long, especially taking that deeper dive. I know from a COVID online learning perspective, online bullying is now a thing, and it's so much more advanced, and it's not that typical style of bullying that we may be accustomed to. So really having that bullying task force, taking a deeper look into it, I think would extremely benefit our students and everyone in general.
All right, Ms. Long, I'm not sure if there are any openings on that task force, but if so, add Ms. Davidson to it.
she was on my list.
Any other questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion. Ms. Spadafora.
Just one quick question. Do we have a school committee member on that task force? Just refresh my memory, excuse me.
Ms. Long?
It's been
actually me.
Okay, which I thought.
And Adam Weldai. And there's certainly, there's room for anybody. There's not a limited amount. I think, each person brings their own perspective on what's best.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
We'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Weldai, seconded by Ms. Luong. Is everybody clear? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Task force to study the possibility of offering both in-person and remote learning in the future. So let me just say, I would typically in person step down from the chair to talk about this, but because we're virtual still, let me just briefly say that over the past year, I have been surprised and impressed by the number of students who have come to me in different meetings to say that they believe that when we're past the pandemic, which we will be hopefully soon, that they believe there is a place for both of these models. And some of the reasons that, I've heard from students is that they learn better remotely. They do better by not being in a large crowd. So I know this is a long journey because you'd have to have the state support this concept, but I think it's one worth traveling based on the number of students that I've heard back from. Just recently, there was a pretty lengthy article in the Malden Neighborhood News with different students at Malden High School testifying about how they have grown as a student remotely. So what I would ask the committee tonight, just to endorse the idea of looking into it further. I haven't really thought about the logistics just yet, but I didn't want to think about those logistics if the committee wasn't in agreement that we should, take a look at it. This would not have anything to do with live streaming. I think what I would envision is, those that do well in person, they learn in person. Those that do better remotely, they would learn through a remote academy. So, so that was the thought behind it. Ms. Davidson.
Just my personal input, but I know as a Malden High student in remote learning, I think it was an important time for growth in a more personal introspective, because I did learn a lot about myself. I went from wanting to become a biologist to a teacher. So I don't know how that happened, but I think it is something to consider, and it's an important request.
Thank you. So anybody else? Mr. Weldai? And then Ms. Spadafora.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I was happy when you sent this request over, because it's something that's been on my mind too, particularly when I saw that Neighborhood View article. But I used the phrase learning loss today in this meeting, and I hate the phrase learning loss, and I still used it because you try to think about how to describe what's happened, but there's been just as much gained, I think, as there has been lost. I mean, this was definitely a very challenging year. It's certainly something where, we're all on an equal playing field in terms of the situation that we were put in. But I get very nervous about the idea of, and it's what I feel like and what I felt like Desi was trying to do, just to push back to whatever quote unquote normal is, and just a complete and total glazing over of the past year. And there's been a lot that I think we can learn from, things that have gone well, and not just in terms of, the student experience, but also the educator experience. I mean, there's a lot there, right? And we became a system that really also shifted our own focus too, to think about, we talk about the whole child, but we thought a lot more about the whole child this year: food security, emotional health. I mean, there are a lot of things that happened that I hope we don't just glaze over and just push back to normal and forget about. So I was very happy when you brought this up. I wholeheartedly support talking about it, because I think we need to talk about it so that we don't just lose it.
Yeah. Ms. Spadafora?
Chair. So I am all for creating a task force, and although I didn't sign on to it, I'm always about diving deeper into, finding out what works best. I will say I'm a bit hesitant in creating a whole, the way it sounds, separate entity when we're trying to create equity amongst the district. And if certain students or maybe parents or caregivers feel remote is best for them, we're now separating them from their peers. Maybe students or just kids that are in the neighborhood that they're going to school with already. And so I'm good with creating a task force, but I really hope we really dive deep into what that creates and separation, especially as we sit here and we spoke earlier about our AEAP program, and it's a bit inequitable, or quite inequitable in the district right now in this separation. So that's my only hesitation, but I will vote to create a task force to look at it deeper.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Anybody else? If not, let's take a motion to approve the task force, and then I'll come back with the particulars later on. Motion by Mr. Weldai, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Any other questions, queries, qualms, concerns? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, the ayes have it. That carries unanimously. All right, so where we are now is our personal privilege, item number 6. So we'll take any points of personal privilege. If not, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining, non-union raises, central office, secretarial salary, superintendent's contract. Let's start with Ms. Spadafora.
Mr. Chair, so very quickly, just an update that the BBPTO will be meeting tomorrow, April 6th at 6:30 p.m. The link is posted on the BBPTO Facebook page, and I will share it on my school committee page as well. And I just wanted to also welcome Sarah Joint as the BB School Liaison. She'll be assisting the school with engaging families and community within the school. Ms. Joint will be helping us strengthen our communication system and further the creation of a warm, welcoming environment for all families. And I will also provide her contact information on my school committee Facebook page as well. And that's
all right, very good. Thank you, Ms. Davidson.
I'm not quite sure if this follows under personal privilege, but I was wondering if we could entertain the idea later on, not today, of having a 4-day school week with that Wednesday asynchronous block possibly being an option. Because I know I've seen kind of that improvement in both students and faculty of having that extra day of either office hours, lesson planning, or simply doing asynchronous work and that independent time. And even clubs, I know that's the only time I have for clubs, and getting that Wednesday really allows me to dig deeper in what I enjoy doing. And I think that it would benefit the community to consider that.
All right, we'll look at that as part of this, okay? Anybody else? Otherwise, we're going to entertain a motion for executive session. Mr. Iovino.
I'll make that motion to go into executive session, sir.
Seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Drummy,
Yes.
Mr. Froyo,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora,
yes.
Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mayor Christensen.
Yes. All right, for those in attendance, we're going to go into executive session. We will come back out. Depending on how that goes, we may vote when we do to adjourn, as well as take up any of the business from executive session. All right, so we'll leave this. And we'll see you in executive session. All right. We're back. We'll entertain any motions. Mr. Iovino.
Chairman, make a motion that we accept the contractual agreement to the amendment to the memorandum of understanding between the Malden School Committee and the Malden Education Association.
Seconded by Michelle.
Second.
Ms. Luong. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Let's call the roll. Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Froyo,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora,
Yes.
Mr. Drummy,
Yes.
me, yes. That carries unanimously. Any other motions?
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Iovino.
Make a motion that we, Malden School Committee, accepts the contractual negotiations for the new superintendent, Dr. Latia Noriega Murphy, to become the next superintendent of the Malden Public Schools.
Seconded by Ms. Spadafora. Any questions, queries, qualms about that? Hearing none. Let's call the roll. Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Froyo,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora,
Yes.
Mr. Drummy,
Yes.
and me, yes. That carries unanimously. We'll now entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Iovino, seconded by Ms. Spadafora. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. School committee is hereby adjourned.
Good night, folks.
Everyone.